Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen J. Palacini. I'm a licensed, regulated Canadian immigration consultant with SJP Immigration Inc. And the goal of this channel is to provide DIY applicants and anybody seeking to immigrate to Canada with information, how-to videos, my opinions on the current state of immigration affairs. And actually, right now, I want to do one on how to extend your temporary resident status as a visitor. So, how to do a visitor extension, which is known as applying for a visitor record. I want to talk about it and I want to show you how to do it in the GC key and the relevant forms, and also show you what the officer is going to be looking at, whether they should extend your status. So, what does this mean? I am going to talk a little bit too about the difference between a visitor visa and a visitor record. So, just so you know, a visitor visa is what is stamped in your passport. It is what allows you to enter Canada. It doesn't give you a right to enter. You're still subject to examination, but it basically means they've checked the security reasons and believe you're going to return to your home country and you have a valid reason for visiting Canada, right? So, many people come on those 10-year visas, they stay, and then it's maybe 4, 5, 6 months. And Canada is an isolated country. We only share a border with the United States, and we're in North America, so we're far from the rest of the world. In fact, which is why a lot of people maybe want to stay a little bit longer than 6 months. And flights aren't cheap. I recently just returned actually from a 3-week vacation in the Philippines. It was absolutely fantastic. I love that country. Beautiful, beautiful country. Amazing beaches, amazing people, amazing food. And so to all my Pinoys out there, I really, really enjoyed my time in the Philippines, and I look forward to going back. And I had a fantastic time. So I'm going to be doing a video also on my trip to the Philippines and show some content there, because I do see a lot of potential in the Philippines, especially because Filipinos are the third largest immigrant group to Canada right now. So I foresee that continuing on into the future, and a lot of my clients are from the Philippines. So we want to discuss here the a visitor record, an extension. Okay, so a visitor record extension is basically when you've been in Canada and now you want to stay beyond 6 months, and you don't want to go to the border and like reset your status, because then you're reseeking admission into Canada. So you want to stay in Canada and you want to apply online to IRCC. Say, hey, look, I need to stay a little bit longer as a visitor. You need to provide some good reasons why. So a perfect example right now in my practice, where I'm assisting, a family, is parents have status in Canada. So father PR, mother Canadian citizen, and they've sponsored their minor son for permanent residence. Still waiting on the PR to process for the son, okay? But got a TRV for the son so he could come to Canada and join with the parents sooner than later. So now son is in Canada, but was only issued 6 months at the port of entry, at the border, right? So when you come into Canada, if they stamp your passport, usually they have those stamps that are automatically just 6 months down the line. That'll be when you need to leave Canada. If they don't stamp your passport, it still is 6 months from when you entered Canada. They know, they have it in their system. They scanned your passport or used Arrive Scan or whatever. Arrive Scam. So when you then are in Canada and you're looking to extend your status as a visitor for whatever reason, in this case, the kid wants to stay in school, still waiting for his PR to process. So I've got more than enough reasons for why he should be able to stay as a visitor. Also, how he has the funds. Both of his parents are working, okay? The kid can be supported. He's not going to be destitute and on the street. So for a lot of people that came here as visitors and now they're looking to extend, maybe they're not ready to quite go back home. They want to spend a little bit more time, or maybe they're about to think about enrolling in a program or are seeking a job and they're going through that process. They may want to extend their status as a visitor, because you don't want to go out of status. That's automatically setting a bad record then with Canadian immigration, unless you have a good reason for going out of status. Okay, so a visitor record is issued only from within Canada. You can't apply for a visitor record from overseas, and it's issued either at the port of entry or it's issued by IRCC. Okay, and it's a document. You can see they have an example of it, I think, on their website, what it kind of looks like, but it just says it kind of looks like a crappier version of a work permit. And this is what it looks like, okay? And it's a visitor record. And so in the case of this family, I'm going to be applying for a visitor record to match the length of the kid's passport, because I don't know how long the PR application process is going to take, and I don't want him to go out of status while his PR application is in process, okay? And they do mention here, yes, a visitor record is not a visa. You'll also notice that, I know it's mailing address. I never recommend doing paper-based applications. They oftentimes get lost, delayed. Do not trust their processing times. Only apply online. And if you're going to apply on paper, it's because you have to have a very valid reason, which would be something like you have a disability and can't use a computer, okay? But you're going to then have to justify that to immigration. And I've seen a lot of people that have done paper-based applications trying to avail faster processing times, and then their applications just get stuck and they don't even know what the heck's going on. So it's going to Edmonton. This is the same office that processes work permits, okay? So yeah, temporary resident permits, visitor section, but Edmonton office is where work permits go. If you need to extend your visitor visa when you're in Canada. Now that's a different scenario, right? Because this is visitor record. This will be like, let's say you have a 10-year multiple entry TRV, you're in Canada for 4 months, and you want to now stay another 4 months. You're going to need to apply for a visitor record extension, okay? But what about somebody who then gets a work permit from overseas and their work permit's valid for 1 year? They get a 1-year visa, but then let's say they're here in Canada, then they get an extension. They get a 3-year work permit extension. Well, their visa is still only valid for 1 year. They're going to need to, once they get their new work permit, apply for a visitor visa extension, okay, a TRV extension. And that is a different application. It's a different form, and it goes to Ottawa's office, okay? So that's the difference here. So this video is for somebody who does have a valid visa, and it's valid for, let's say, the next 1 year, or for the duration that you really want to stay in Canada, but you are trying to extend your status, because status and visa are two different things. A work permit, a study permit, or a visitor record, or a stamp in the passport, or an entry into Canada is what grants you status, okay? But you need a visa to come into Canada, or maybe not if you're from a visa exempt country. Okay, so this is pretty much it. This is what you're going to be filling out. IMM 5708 5476. If you have a representative, if you elect to appoint a representative, they're going to ask you to sign that form. And then, yeah, this is release personal information to a designated individual. This would be if you're doing like on behalf of a family member and you want to release that information, or like someone who you're doing this for, like an 80-year-old, right? And they don't know how to use a computer type thing. Statutory declaration of common law union. That would be, of course, if you're common law, right? You're living with somebody. You qualify under a common law partnership, which is living with somebody for more than a year in a marriage-like relationship. And these are the documents. Proof of payment. Well, you don't really need proof of payment, because when you submit it in the GC key, you're going to pay right away. Okay? So that doesn't really apply. They should update that that checklist there. Photocopies of the passport pages, I always say include what they do here. The passport number, so the biodata page, dates and issue of expiry, that should be on the biodata page, name and date of birth, biodata page, the stamp made by the Canadian authorities, if you have one, great, and any other marked page. So if you have any other visas or any other stamps in your passport, like the one I'm going to have now where, I entered and I exited the Philippines, that's great. And interestingly enough, I only had 30 days in the Philippines. So Canada gives 6 months, probably because we're just so far away from everything. It's hard to get to. But photocopies of your traveler identity document, everybody I've ever met has only ever used a passport to come into Canada. I don't know any other document that you could use. Photocopy of your current immigration document if you have one. In this case, this would be your stamp if you have a stamp, a visitor record if you've already extended once and now you're extending a second time. Photocopy of your marriage license or certificate, of course, to show your marital status. This is very important too. Proof of means of support, okay? So in the case of my client, where he's a young child, both his parents are working. I'm going to show that both his parents are working, and that either some pay stubs from them, money in the bank account, but they're his supporter. He's a minor. He can't support himself. So that's going to be proof of means of support, so that he's not going to be homeless or whatever. So that's important to show. Now, if you are an adult, this would be, yes, in the form of cash. You're here as a visitor. You're unable to work. You're unable to study. You are able to earn money from overseas. Check their new guidance on, digital nomads, right? So if you were receiving income from overseas for work done outside of the Canadian labor market, so it means you're not targeting Canadian businesses or Canadian people, you're doing work overseas for a foreign corporation that is not operating in Canada, then you could show that and say, hey, look, I'm making enough money. I'm a virtual assistant for this company in the United States. And there you go. There's my proof of means of support. I can continue to support myself in Canada. And again, how much is enough? It all depends really on believability. We all know right now it depends on where you're living. If you're in Toronto and you've got rent covered because you're living with a friend, fine. But then you want to show that you've got maybe housing sorted out to overcome maybe a lack of funds that you have, right? So you could show that you have maybe you're renting a room, or your friends issued a letter that says, yeah, you can stay with me for the next 6 months, and this is where I live, and this is how you can contact me. So this is also very subjective too. Whereas if you have, $50,000 in cash, don't worry. Like, that's more than enough to live in Canada for at least, I'd say, a year, if you really stretch it for one person. Okay. So that is the subjective part. So this is your document checklist. So this is exactly what I'm going to do for my clients, right? I'm going to do 5708, complete that form, make sure that form matches what was the information submitted on his visitor visa and on the PR application, so it's consistent. Make sure the dates all line up, show the stamp on his passport if he was given one, and include proof of means of support, so show that both his parents are there and they're married. And also show the relationship, again, birth certificate naming the parents, and they're married. So and proof of means of support, so that they're working, okay? To show that they have enough money, they're both working full time, whether that could be letters from their employer or, even recent pay stubs, okay? And in this case, I may even want to include the fact that he's in school right now. So just confirmation of enrollment, because you are allowed to study as a visitor, as a minor in Canada at a public institution. So just show that he is, currently studying. Like, he's not doing nothing in Canada, and there's a reason why we need to extend his visitor record and status in Canada while he's waiting for the PR to process. So I want to dig a little bit into my favorite part, which is usually the section on the IRCC website that contains policy, procedures, and guidance used by IRCC staff, and they say it's posted as a courtesy to stakeholders. So basically they're saying, and this is one other thing to consider. So when you're applying to extend your temporary residence, because as a visitor you came and you were only supposed to stay under 6 months, you didn't require actually a medical exam. But when you extend beyond 6 months in Canada, you'll need a medical exam if you're from one of those countries. So either go get an upfront medical exam to show that you can remain in Canada beyond 6 months, or wait until the officer requests one, okay? In the case of my client, for the PR application, they've done a medical exam, okay? So there's no concern now at this point that he's going to need to go ahead and go do one, because he's in Canada and it's been less than a year. So these are the questions that the officer is going to be asking, okay? What are you doing in Canada? How long have you been here? How long is the request for? You can't request to stay beyond the validity of your passport. So recently I had a visitor record where the applicant had tried to extend their passport from within Canada and it was in the process of getting extended, but they couldn't travel without it. So I basically said, hey, look, this is their passport. They are, they need it until their old passport will expire, and they granted the visitor record until the end of the expiry of original passport while they were waiting in Canada. So officers must consider the reason given by the client for applying for the extension. So are they well thought out or merely frivolous? Like, yeah, I want to stay in Canada. I have $500. I'm not working. I have no source of income. They're not going to extend your status. They will take your applicant situation, your home country. Is it reasonable to stay in Canada? Do you have the money? Do you have a lot to go back to back home? And do you support yourself, or is someone else willing to provide adequate support? So in this case, the parents, of course, they're providing adequate support for their son. And your ability to leave Canada. Do you have enough money to leave Canada, right? Do you have enough money to get a return ticket, to go back home? So this, again, is just proof of funds is very important here for visitor record extension. And if you originally visited Canada, what was your original? Was it to attend a wedding? Now, why are you looking to extend, right? So maybe you came for a wedding, but now, I don't know, you decided to do some tourism because you won the lottery back home and you've got a bunch of extra proof of funds, right? Or maybe in some cases you can study without a permit, right? You can study in programs that are less than 6 months. Maybe you're taking some English courses, or you're enrolled in some other type of private program that's not going to give you a study permit or a PGWP or anything, but you just decided to take some like cooking classes and it lasts for 8 weeks. You would show that in the purpose. Just say, yeah, I want to remain in Canada to complete this program. Okay. What family employment have you left behind, and how have they been discharged? Is the proposed extension logical, reasonable, and feasible in light of these circumstances? So that's what they're going to be looking at. Okay. Now, and then they talk all about, yeah, they will, if they've expired. Okay. That's why you don't want to expire. And that's why I will say, guys, if you've come in, let's say on June 11th to Canada, you have to leave December 11th. Okay. 6 months later, June 11th, December 11th. And if you're going to file an extension online for an extension of your extension of your visitor record, or to be issued a visitor record to get an extension on it, you would have to do that before December 11th UTC time, Universal Coordinated Time. Okay, so UTC time right now is 11:33 a.m., but I'm at 3:33 a.m. on Pacific time. So it's very important that you probably apply like a day before, at least, for a visitor record extension. Okay, so if your status expires on the 11th, apply on the 10th, at least. Earlier the better, right? Because if you are 1 minute past that, you will have gone out of status. It will be refused. They'll ask you to pay a restoration fee. Then you'll have to restore status. Then you'll be out of status. Then you'll have breached some of the conditions, right? Because you're out of status in Canada. So you don't want to do that. And if you then are in Canada as a visitor and trying to maybe search for a job, an LMIA supported or an LMIA exempt job offer, if you are out of status as a visitor, then you have to restore your status first as a visitor, which costs an extra restoration fee, and then you would need to change your status. Whereas if you're still as a valid visitor in Canada, then you could either flagpole or you could apply to change your conditions just as a worker without having to worry about the restoration. So it's going to add a lot more time if you do go out of status, and it's not a good thing to go out of status, because then you're always going to have to answering, yes, I remained in Canada without authorization, right? On any of those forms in the future. So that was a lot about it. A very lengthy video, but let's get that form and let's see how we can get to it with the GC key. So it would be, and like I said, these are a lot different than in apply to come to Canada. So we would be applying for a, there's no personal reference code, visitor visa. What would you like to do in Canada? You'd like to visit. How long are you planning to stay in Canada? Temporarily less than 6 months. I mean, for this kid, I would like to do temporarily more than 6 months and see what happens. I will, let's check it out, because I do want to request a visitor record that will match, that'll be for at least 2 years for this kid, because I don't know how long it's going to take to process the PR. What's your country or territory of residence? Canada, right? If you're presently in Canada, you should select Canada. Yes. What's your date of birth? I don't quite recall, but let's say he's about that young. Have you lived in Canada as a landed? No. No. Visitor? Child? No. Was your marital status? Of course, never married, single. This is a minor. Alberta? Yes. No. So this is it. You're eligible to extend your stay in Canada. It got me to the right thing, which is going to be the right checklist. Your status in Canada, it expires soon. So let's say 2024, March 10th, let's say. Yes. See, this is what they're asking. Did you submit an application? No. It's just for him. Yes. Be appointing a representative. Sure. Why not? Yep. Yes. Okay. It should ask me now for 5708. And let's see if they add anything else to this checklist that they want. So great. 5708, representative submission letter. That's not mandatory. Passport, okay. Use of rep, as I said. And passport is on this checklist, right? Photocopies of the passport pages. Proof of means of financial support, that is required. Proof of upfront medical exam, that is, because he's from a country where it's required, but I have that proof. Digital photo, they don't have that in the checklist, right? But that is always important to include a digital photo. It's on all these checklists. So digital photo, it would be for, temporary residence. And it doesn't need to be, it can be done just by yourself. It just needs to meet those specifications, right? Show full front view of the head and tops, side of the head, chin and crown. But if you want to be super cautious, you can go to obviously like Shoppers Drug Mart or London Drugs and get it done. Family member proof of status is just to show that this is in Canada it's asking for family member proof of status. Canadian citizenship document, parents are citizens, and PR. Optional documents, they always ask for this, but I'm not going to be including it because he does have a valid temporary resident visa. And client information, that's where you can put any additional information. So this is just literally, it's $100. It's not too bad. And I will, obviously you would upload your 5708 and all these recommended and required documents. So in the case of people who, what would you put in client information? That would be if you're extending your stay because you're, deciding to study and you have you're showing that you're doing a 4-month program that's like a culinary cooking class or something, right? Or that it's a 4-month long wedding. That's where you would put it in client information. You're establishing a reason as to why you're extending your stay. You've got the area to put proof of means of financial support. For the minor, I'm going to show that his parents are working, right? If you're not a minor, you would show that you've got money coming from overseas or that you've still got enough money in the bank to support you for a proposed stay in Canada. And then you won't have a representative submission letter if you don't have a representative, but I always like to put a letter of explanation if you're a DIY applicant in your client information. Just explain the officer, why are you staying longer, right? Why are you looking for this extension? And think about, to know what they're going to be thinking about, it's this is what they're going to be wondering. What are you doing in Canada? Are the plans well thought out or merely frivolous? This is your opportunity to explain to the officer, like, hey, this is why you should grant me another 4 months or 6 months, right? So in this information, this is where I'm going to say waiting on it's been approved to sponsor, approved in principle, we have an AOR, applicant is going to be waiting for PR to finalize, right? So might as well get if we're paying $100, might as well get the visitor record for the length of the kid's passport, because then IRCC can take their sweet time on finalizing the PR application, right? So that's what I'm going to be explaining to the officer. Like, just go for as long as you possibly can, because it's just taking time right now. Okay? So that's pretty much it. I will show you how to do 5708. We can just fill that out briefly. So IMM forms. This is very important because I like to go to the website because they do change these forms often. So this one was last modified September 2023, you can see. So we know this is the most recent version. And let me go open this here. And I'll go through, and if you have questions, like if you're uncertain how to fill this out, they have their very not always useful guides right here. So this is the guide 5551, right? In here it'll tell you, yeah, use this guide if you're a temporary resident who's already in Canada and you want to extend your stay. Get a visitor record. You can also click this and it's going to say, are you eligible, right? Like, it's going to go through their whole thing, or what's the difference between a visitor visa and a record. But this is actually a useful point too for a lot of people to read. So this is how to do it and how to fill out the forms, what to put in. It doesn't always provide more information or enough information, but any questions, you can book an appointment with me or with another regulated consultant or lawyer and just have somebody review your application. Make sure it seems strong if you want some peace of mind. So UCI, well, you're going to have the UCI. UCI is unique client identifier. It's 8 to 11 digits. It will be on your visitor visa. You'll be able to see it on the visitor visa. So you're looking to extend your status as a visitor. Okay. Hopefully not extend and restore. You can select both, but then you'd have to pay for a restoration fee. And that's if you've gone out of status. But this is for people who are still in status. Full name, given name. Obviously, this is going to match pretty much exactly what you put on visitor visa application. So put that in for him there. Yeah, sex, date of birth, place of birth, citizenship, current country as Canada. I would put the date status. Right now, he's a visitor in Canada. And it would be from the date he entered. Okay? So he entered sometime in like September or August. And I put his status is valid until March something. Previous countries, it would be, yeah, where he was previously living. Essentially from birth as a citizen. Current marital status, single. No, not in a common law. No, never been. He's a minor. Native language, put the native language here, and then show communicate in English. Has he done a designated testing? I don't think he has. You should always answer that. Like, that means if you've done IELTS, right? Or CELPIP. Passport, country or territory of issue. That's always like the country or territory of the passport. So in this case, it's Philippines. Even if the passport was reissued in Canada and it says like Ottawa, no, it's a Philippine passport. It's basically, this is your country of citizenship, the country who's issued the passport. Issue date, expiry date, all this, a national identity document. I don't think he'll have one, or I don't think he does have one. US PR card, that would be no. Contact information. So because they're going to be mailing the visitor record, okay, because he's within Canada, I would put the mailing address of the parents here, like their home address, okay, which is the same as their residential address. So they will send you a visitor record in the mail, like they will send you a work permit in the mail, okay? So that's important. So you don't want it to go to like your consultant's office or your consultant's mailbox. You want this to go to, right, your mail. And then telephone number, put that in. That would be the parents' contact. Email address would be the parents'. Date and place of original entry to Canada, this would be on the stamp, right? And when they say original entry to Canada, the place would be, I see people sometimes just say like Vancouver. I'm like, well, Vancouver has a lot of places of entry. I mean, it has a marine port of entry. It has Point Roberts, technically. It has Sumas Crossing, Douglas, Peace Arch, like all those, Aldergrove. So where? At the airport? Yes. Then Vancouver International Airport or YVR, right? So be specific in the place. And the original purpose would be, yeah, visitor, tourism, any of these drop down, right? Family visit, other. And if you put other, then put in a reason. Like I came here to study English for 4 months. I actually failed. So now I need to take another, 3 months of study. So date and place of your most recent entry to Canada, that would be if during the time you've been a visitor in Canada, you left and then you re-entered, okay? In many cases, that's just going to be the same as the original entry, okay? But if you originally came to Canada in like 2020, you would put, that's your original entry. The original entry is the first step foot in Canada, okay? Like my original entry to the Philippines was January 21st, 2024, right? I may go back to the Philippines. I definitely will. I love it. It's a beautiful country. And that is my original entry. So always put the first day you came to Canada. And if you don't remember, you can apply to get your travel history with the CBSA. Like if you really don't remember, but you should know that date, okay? Look through your old passports, look for old stamps. Now, if applicable, provide the document number of your most recent visitor record. Study permit, work permit, temporary. Now, in some cases, when they stamp your passport, they'll stamp it and then they'll write in pen, like a record. They'll write the U number, or not W, but U number, U54286, and you would put that in if they wrote it in pen. Okay, and I would include a copy of that in your client information. Details of visit to Canada. Now, this is kind of weird because you're like, okay, well, are you doing short-term studies? In this case, for my client, it would be challenging. Of course, let's do the elimination. He's not here for business, not really here for tourism, not short-term studies because he intends to study, more than that. Is he a returning student? Well, he never really left, right? This is his first time in Canada. Not a returning worker. I would put either other or family visit. I probably would do family visit. I would do indicate how long you plan to stay, and I would provide, if I can provide information here and other, I would, name and relationship. It would be mother, father, like kid, okay? The child of the parents wants to stay in Canada. Funds available for my stay. Pardon me, I'm still jet lagged. And I feel like shit. So, funds available for my stay. I would put whatever the parents have in terms of liquid cash, but it could be, $5,000. Expenses will be paid by parents. And education, this would be just for a minor. It would be where he's studying right now in Canada. Employment, this would be not applicable. Okay? And then background information, we'd go through everything. And that's it. Of course, in the background information, it would say, have you ever been previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? I would say yes. And that was, I applied for PR, waiting for PR. Here's my AOR number, blah, blah, blah. So that is, in this case, a visitor record. But if you have, if you're applying to extend your stay as a visitor and you're just coming to visit Canada, you did previously apply to enter or remain in Canada, right? When applying to enter is when you go to the border. And you should always declare if you have been refused a visa, permit denied to leave Canada or any other country or territory. So I hope that kind of summarizes how to do a visitor record extension. It's relatively simple. You just need to have good reasons for staying, and it would likely be approved if you just show that you have the proof, the means, and a reasonable purpose to stay, right? So thanks again. Make sure you like and subscribe. This stuff really helps me when you guys do subscribe. It motivates me to want to put out more content at like 4 a.m. BC time. I am jet lagged, which is kind of why, and I'm looking forward to doing a video talking about my wonderful experience in the Philippines. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and just feel free to comment. If you have any questions, I like to answer questions on immigration stuff in public on my channel because it helps to drive engagement. Number one, other people gain value from it. Okay, and it's a way that I can help DIY applicants and not basically gatekeep. You know, sure, you want to book a private consultation with me, by all means, you can pay for that. But if you want something quick answered, just ask it on my channel because then other people will gain value from it and it has an exponential effect. So thank you so much for tuning in and good luck on your visitor extension.